From the time I was a little kid, I was always moving around fast. I got to the age where they had to let me out of the pen. So what I would do is I would run up and down the sidewalk just all day long. And then if I wanted to go perpendicular, then I'd go back and forth across the street. And now, if there were cars coming, well, that was just too bad for the cars. My parents were busy off at work, and my brothers were at school or whatever. Now, my parents, even though they both worked, they didn't have a lot of money. Or we didn't have a lot of money because Catholic school tuition, uniforms, occasional trips south of the border, that was about it. So I don't know if they didn't want to pay for daycare or they couldn't afford it or maybe they just innocently didn't realize. But between the time my next oldest brother, who was 4 years older than me, went off to kindergarten and I came along, something had happened to my grandmother who they brought here from Mexico. She had become senile. I mean, all of my recollections of her, and they're very vivid, and there are many of them, is of her, like if you're going to come up with a snapshot of my memory of her, she was sitting still, motionless, kind of in a daze, at a chair, at a small table that folded out from the wall in this small kitchen, and all she would do all day long was listen to her Spanish language radio and eat Mexican bread with Mexican coffee and maybe Mexican chocolate sometimes. I don't know if she ever went to the bathroom, but every time I came in, she was still just sitting there. She didn't speak a word of English. So I just ran wild. Now, kindergarten is at least a year off. And I'm in this, I had this corduroy overalls, kind of a jumper. I don't know why I remember that, but I do. And I practically lived in them. Up and down the sidewalk, back and forth across the street. So what was a common occurrence in our neighborhood was the sound of tires screeching, followed by some stranger usually, not always, but some stranger would pull over, park, grab me by the hand and ask me to point out which house was mine. Next thing you know, they're on the porch yelling at my parents for not keeping a better eye on me. Well, fortunately, I outgrew running out in front of cars. Well, eventually. It's been about a little over a decade since my battle with the bottle, with compliments of Remus in the Valley of the Gods a little earlier. And I'm still, like, I would sneak the occasional half-empty glass of champagne that somebody had left, you know, at Christmas or New Year's. But it would be quite a while before I started drinking to my full potential. I was 11. But growing up in Lily White, San Leandro, you couldn't just ride your skateboard down to the liquor store and put a bag of hooch on there and have them ring you up and skate off. It was rare, and when it did happen, it was usually one of those in the shadows of the dark parking lot late, by that I mean 9 o'clock, and some stranger would agree to do it, but you had to promise not to go get the booze till he was long gone. So he'd go and set the bag down, we'd get our Colt 45 and our Spinata, and we'd mix them in those big-ass milkshake cups. Well, we couldn't hold very much, you know, we were kind of young. So when we'd finish, we'd put them back in bushes, and of course they're 80 degrees the next time we come and get them, so that was that. Now, in the Catholic school educational system, there's no middle school, there's no junior high. You go straight from 8th to 9th grade. So when I got to high school, different ball game. I went to school in a private Catholic high school, gated private Catholic high school up in the Oakland Hills to keep us in and people out. But it was just a 15-cent bus ride down 98th Avenue to the hinterlands of East Oakland, where any mom and pa would sell, at least beer and wine, maybe not hard stuff. And I can even remember seeing kids in grammar school uniforms from St. Cyril's. Yeah, they put a six-pack up on the counter, and without even looking up, the clerk would say, $1.37. You know, and seriously, I mean, they would sell to everybody. So we could get our beer and our wine here and there, kind of easy. You know, it wasn't that tricky. But we couldn't do it very often, and it would get late, and we'd have to, you know, be careful. Now, fast forward 2 years, we've got wheels. Now we can really have some fun. In this school, now there's lots of cliques. There's lots of cliques now, but not like at public school. I did a year at public school. And there in public school, those of you that know about this, where I went anyway, there was a clique for every 3 people. Well, in Catholic school, it was like the whole school was one big clique, like a fraternity. And not that I really know what that's like, but it was sort of like that. I mean, there were some divisions, but it was like one big club. Now, within this school, there were like 3 subdivisions, or at least in my class. There were the bad dudes, the studs, you know who I mean, right? The guys who had sex with other people. And then there were us, you know, the geeks, the class clowns, the goof-offs, and everybody else. Now, there was an interesting dynamic going on with this tripartite little social subdivision. The cool kids thought us goof-offs were happening. We were witty, we were intelligent, we were smart asses, we kept classes entertaining, we harassed the teachers no end, always getting the better of them, which wasn't hard to do. And so what we would do on Saturday nights, once we had wheels, was we would go out on maneuvers. Now, 1 car for the cool kids, 1 car for the goof-offs. And we'd meet at this guy's house on 73rd Avenue, near where the intersection of Foothill and MacArthur are. Insane, busy intersection from 3 different directions, all at once, converging on a hill, no less, that kind of curved when you got to the bottom of it. Insane traffic situation. And what we'd do, first we'd go for the food. There was a McDonald's just down the street, that's down the street at 68th and Foothill. And we'd go there because it was close, but also people we went to school with worked there. And so what we would do, because we were such lazy teenagers, we would draw straws, and the loser had to go inside and order the food. And what that meant was he would take in $1 and go to someone he recognized at the desk, at the cash register, and we would get 2 grocery store sized paper bags of Big Macs, cheeseburgers, filet of fish, everything. 2 big bags, and whatever they could fill into those bags, he'd give $1 and then get 4 quarters back. So now we're chowing down on those. Now for the beer. Now the mom and pop places have closed down, and so now we've got to find a full-on liquor store. And they sold too. Now what we would do is we had it already set up that if we ever got caught, we would give the name of a liquor store that didn't sell to minors as where we got the beer. And then what we would do is we would go to one that did, and that's what we would do. We'd pull into Mr. Mann's liquor store, park in the parking lot, and leave our trunk open. We'd pool our money together, and one person would go in and pay for a few cases of beer. He'd walk out, we'd get him, and we'd go around the block. When we came out, trunk closed, beer inside. Now, the cool kids would come, and we'd be there first at this one goof-off's house right there on 73rd, and they would show up and usually made us late. They were like conveniently late. They were usually made us wait a few minutes. Well, this one time, they made us wait 45 minutes. Did I mention I get bored easily? And so I couldn't just sit there and talk and shoot the breeze like the other goof-offs waiting for him to come would. So I would do this thing, now usually only for a few minutes. But there was this one time they were really like 45 minutes late. And the longer they made us wait, the closer the calls were. And what I would do is this. And I'd like to think I invented this sport. What I would do is I would gauge the speed and the distance of cars coming from both directions on 73rd Avenue, almost to the bottom of the hill. And I would wait to the very last second, because it's no fun if you don't do that. I'd wait to the very last second, and I'd dash out between the 2 cars coming in both directions. And when the near car comes, you speed up, that's no big deal. But now you've really got to put on the afterburner, because the second car coming the other direction is that much closer to you. Plus by now it's getting dark, so I'm harder to see. And it didn't matter, because sometimes people would actually speed up. I'm not kidding. And a few times they'd veer over. One time I got clipped right by heel. A bumper hit my heel. Yeah, just like that. But I kept going back and forth. Well, the guys who were waiting there for me were just so jaw-dropped by this. One of them tried telling the cool guys when they got there about Rodriguez's latest insane antic. But they were the cool kids, and nothing was cool unless one of them did it.